Everybody. Welcome. Today is Friday, March 4th, 2022. And today in our ETM Distinguished Speaker Series, it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Judith Estep. She is the Chief Technology and Innovation Strategy Officer at the Bonneville Power Administration. In this role, she's responsible for managing strategic initiatives related to operational and research activities. Prior to joining Bonneville Power Administration, she was the manager in the Product Validation Operations and Planning Group at Daimler Trucks North America. Her educational background includes a BS in Mechanical Engineering, CUSLA, and a Master of Science in Operations Research from George Washington University, and a PhD in our department, the Engineering and Technology Management Department at Portland State University. The focus of her dissertation was on technology transfer in the utility industry. She also has her project management professional certification. She's been an adjunct instructor for us for some classes over the last couple of years. And it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Judith Estep to speak on managing changes to support BPA's most important asset, its people. And that's a challenge we're all facing right now as all of our workplaces are changing. Just today, I got a memo about what we're doing with respect to COVID and masks at PSU. So every place is making these changes. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Estep. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. If you can go to the next slide, Dr. Anderson, please. Happy Friday. For me, I'm just really happy that it's coming to a close this week. It's been a very long week. So thank you for the invitation to speak as part of this series. The guidance, Dr. Anderson, that you provided, if you want to go back up to the agenda, thank you. The guidance that Dr. Anderson provided was to deliver an other than technical discussion. And I think that it could not have been a more timely request. I think sharing about what BPA is doing to support our people and develop our culture is a timely and relevant topic. So this discussion will demonstrate our commitment to our workplace culture with an emphasis on valuing people, fostering that positive and inclusive work environment that's going to allow us to achieve and deliver on our mission. So included will be considerations for how the workforce is adapting and responding to the impacts of a pandemic and adjusting to a new normal in a post-pandemic era. And I don't even know if we can say that it's a post-pandemic era yet, but it feels like we're kind of approaching that. So I'll step out on a limb and make that assertion. So I've presented the agenda topics here, and thank you for the introduction, Dr. Anderson. Yeah, I've been at BPA for 12 years, and really the step from going from a trucking industry to an energy environment, yeah, I scratched my head as well, thinking, what do they have in common? And it's really about managing the process of projects and programs, and now able to bring in that technology transfer component. So my PhD in the program, what appealed to me and still appeals to me about the ETM program is that it puts an emphasis on comprehensive, holistical, and critical thinking about topics. And it's rarely just a technical problem or a technical solution. The solutions to problems are usually informed by many factors that include social, economic, political, environmental, as well as those technical considerations. And I try to bring this approach to problem solving to my workforce. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Bonneville Power Administration, BPA is a wholesale provider of electricity to the Pacific Northwest. Our agency delivers reliable, affordable, and carbon-free hydropower produced in the Columbia River Basin to all communities across the Northwest. The agency owns about 3/4 of the high voltage transmission lines in the region, and we provide about 1/3 of the electricity used in the Pacific Northwest. And so that translates to supporting nearly 3 million people and more than 1.2 million jobs that are dependent on BPA for power. So next slide. So almost 2 years ago, BPA started a concentrated effort to evaluate and elevate the importance of valuing our people. It started with the development of people-focused strategy, and more recently, the development of a dedicated office to manage workplace-related initiatives. The agency stood up a workplace and strategy office with the objective of enhancing and ensuring BPA's ability to deliver on our mission of safe and reliable power. Next slide. The strategic function is appropriately placed in this organization, and here's why. It's an enterprise-wide initiative that impacts all aspects of the agency. Previously, BPA's strategy function was underneath the deputy, and in 2018, shortly after we developed our first strategic plan, it was disbanded. So we are coming up on renewing that plan and aligning strategy with research that supports that strategy, and then organizing the measures and implementation agency-wide, and measuring that performance against that plan is really the objective of what my team is doing. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the activities in my group going forward. The other role that's new to the Workforce and Strategy Office is that we have BPA's first ever culture officer. The importance of this role is to lead the execution of the organization's commitment to people, culture, and our work environment. As well, it's to create an environment where people take pride in our work and we feel safe, and that's safety related to both physical and emotional safety. The bottom line is that these aspects and characteristics will positively impact our service and the work that we deliver to our customer. And in general, I think that the development and support of this new organization speaks volumes to BPA's commitment to enabling and developing our workforce. Next slide. Specifically, the reorganization included some fundamental changes in alignment with how the other power marketing authorities are operating. BPA eliminated the deputy administrator position and repurposed that role to focus on workforce and strategy. Dan is my boss, and Shada Kewen reports to him. She is the Deputy Chief Workforce and Strategy Officer. I would say that both of these leaders take very seriously BPA's commitment to focus on our most important asset, which is our people. My role has been expanded. Previously, I was the Chief Technology Innovation Officer, and that meant that I was responsible for managing the agency's research activities. But as I described, there's an obvious link between developing an agency strategy and a research program that supports that agency strategy, and then a program that considers the implementation, risks, and performance measurement. And so I've been in this position since October of 2021. Elisa Yanello, she's really the face of developing that people strategy. She led the development of BPA's fifth strategic goal, which is culture strategy. And she's been continuing to develop that program since 2020. Her leadership in developing that program was recognized when she was selected as BPA's first culture officer. Next slide. So here is some insight into how the front office is organized. It is significant, and it's necessary to have this level of support for effective execution of and developing our culture. The importance of tangible, visible, and real executive support can't be underestimated. Next slide. So we're going to go down one level into Dan's new organization. And underneath Dan and Shauna is my group, which is the DS organization, and my role as the Chief Technology Innovation and Strategy Officer. There are three groups that report to me. So there on the right is the Director of Strategy Development. And then in the middle is our technology innovation function. And then to the left is the internal operations. So the strategy, director of strategy and that group, they manage the development of our new agency strategy that is going to cover 2024 to 2028, as well as develop a framework for long-term strategic support. And then the Technology Innovation Program, long-withstanding program 2005, managing activities, research activities. But fundamental to those research activities is a research agenda that will support our agency strategy. And then finally, in the internal operations function, there is the performance measurement, KPIs, KSIs, and the implementation of our agency strategy, as well as working with the technology transfer, that application of research. So those are the three sort of primary functions in my group. Over to the far right is Elisa's organization. Under her is the Diversity and Inclusion Office and other staff that will support future culture development. And while I'm not going to specifically touch on the functions of the Civil Rights and EEO Office, this position also reports to Dan James, as well as the Communications Group and the Human Resources function. So this organization provides for efficiency, streamlining, and encourages collaboration across those functions that support developing our people and culture. Next slide. So I mentioned that Elisa is really the face of BPA's culture strategy development. And because of her leadership, a fifth strategic goal was added to our agency strategy document. And that new goal is focused on our culture. The culture strategy is a way to articulate our aspirational goals around our culture and describe what it looks like when we are performing at our best. A guiding theme is it's not just what we deliver to the region that matters, it's how we deliver it. And so this really serves as the North Star for how and what we want our work environment to be. There are other reasons why culture matters, and I think we have all experienced this firsthand, the impact of these last 2 years. I can't imagine and would have never thought that we'd be in the position we were in, but no matter your opinions or perceptions on the approach or response, we were all impacted. And so it shined another light on the importance of valuing people, protecting for their safety, both physical and psychological safety, and enabling empathy and compassion. Some guiding principles or some context around BPA's culture is that a good business strategy achieves nothing without the people and culture to make it happen. And so we've built a strong foundation for our culture through our current focus on safety, our leadership behaviors of listen more than talk, other strong stewardship, diversity and inclusion, equal opportunity employment, and responsiveness to the changing needs of our customers. But there's a feeling that there's more that's left to be done. And so we are looking forward to developing those competencies in the next iteration of our agency strategy, which includes that component of culture strategy. So how did she go about developing that fifth strategic goal? First, she listened, so focus groups, both at the executive team level as well as employee-wide surveys to understand where there are gaps, what are the real feelings around our culture development. Taking this information, she analyzed and put together a proposed approach for addressing those gaps, tested that program or that process with our front office as well as at cross-agency meetings. And then based on that feedback, narrowed the focus to really identify those 3 areas that are shown off on the right, where we want to use as the basis for developing a culture strategy. And that is, we take pride in our mission and do a job well done. We support and look out for each other, and we innovate, learn, and adapt for the future. Next slide, please. So how are those goals represented in the culture strategy? So there were 4 primary pillars. There was leadership, resilient culture, measuring performance, and partnerships. And then there was the addition of this culture of innovation. And that is based on my participation in the partnership program and recognizing another gap that wasn't initially identified. So from a leadership perspective, we want to build strong leadership skills and capabilities, recognizing that they're essential for achieving that aspirational culture. So we are continuing to develop our leaders so that they have the capabilities to adapt to a changing landscape and model our values and aspirational culture for the rest of the workforce. In practice, this looks like the leadership behavior. So again, listen more than talk. Consider it done are some of the ones that come to mind for me. The promotion of emotional safety, respect, equity, and inclusion, and being willing to try new things for the sake of growth. So we are developing our leaders in those areas. Resilient culture, the objective in this pillar is to build a resilient culture that can adapt to change. A culture network will build the foundation of our movement by personalizing culture and using existing relationships and networks across BPA to implement activities and encourage grassroots conversations. Measuring performance, right? We want to see how we're doing against our plans. So we want to align new and existing measurement tools. One of the tools that we use to measure our progress is the FEVS, or the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, to show data-driven progress towards achieving our goals. Measuring culture is not only important to help show that progress, but it's going to identify maybe some blind spots for us and elevates the conversation to ensure that employees' experience are kept at the forefront. And then the partnership, this was the team where I became involved. So I read the strategic culture strategic plan and really dialed in on the innovation piece, again, as my role as the Chief Technology Innovation Officer at the time. And the role of that partnership program is to improve partnerships between existing programs, build on that existing program work plans to better align and support, and identify opportunities to advance this aspirational culture across BPA. So that was exactly what happened in developing that culture of innovation effort. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, Dr. Anderson. So I would ask you to consider, when someone says innovation in your organization, what comes to mind? So at BPA, it's typically technology innovation, which is BPA's research program. So people make the connection between innovation and research. And in some cases, it wouldn't surprise me if people said, what, BPA does innovation? So the purpose of this program was to encourage out-of-the-box thinking, challenge the status quo, getting people to ask why, and to create an environment where people feel safe to make mistakes and learn. So the program is based on the definition of innovation that I'm presenting here. It's more than just BPA's research program. Innovation encompasses all aspects of working at BPA. There's innovation opportunities demonstrated throughout the agency that are related to cost management, to process improvements, finding efficiencies, as well as that application of new technology. Next slide. So I mentioned my involvement in that program partnership. So when that agency-wide people strategy was developed, the term innovation was included, and that piqued my interest. Specifically, it was around creating a workforce that innovates, learns, and adapts for the future. So in parallel, Elisa's initial sort of feedback on the surveys that she sent out, employees indicated that there was a lack of trust and feelings that they weren't enabled to submit ideas for improvement. So in my mind, that's a dichotomy. You can't aspire to be an innovative workforce if your workforce doesn't feel empowered to change. So why wouldn't an organization want a workforce that feels empowered and is encouraged to innovate? Statistically, innovative workforces are more satisfied, they're engaged, they're productive, they have feelings of commitment and contribution. So the Technology Innovation Group at the time, my proposal was that group would be the likely one to manage it based on their experience with innovation in general, as well as their experience with cultures of innovation efforts at other organizations. So through our work with TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, Electric Power Research Institute, Southern California Edison, and Western Area Power Authority, we were able to leverage these relationships and adapt their processes and apply them to learnings and developing BPA's program. As well, this informal network allows us benchmarking opportunities, and oftentimes we have solicited their advice, review of our program, and we were able to course correct based on some of the advice that they've provided. Next slide. So what do innovative thinkers look like? In fact, I'm certain you know many people who are innovative, but you've never maybe thought about them in this context. So I would say that individually, they're characterized by being curious. They're holistic system thinkers, so think of ETM curriculum. They're flexible, they're imaginative, persistent, observant, they're good listeners, and they're open to calculated risks. And I would say that this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but these are ones that resonated with me as I was reviewing what makes an innovative person. So our preliminary stakeholder analysis, as we were putting this program together, confirmed that those survey results back in 2020, 2019, are that people do not feel there is, people do not feel supported, that they can be innovative. And so we felt that these opportunities, these programs, these activities are already happening at the agency. We just need a way to highlight their successes. And so the Culture of Innovation program was designed to ensure an awareness of these characteristics. And by communicating widely and consistency about innovation, it will encourage and support the development of a workforce that does in fact feel empowered to contribute their ideas. Next slide. In fiscal year 21, we were able to do some preliminary fact finding, right? And establish objectives to implement the program in our current fiscal year. So like I said, our preliminary stakeholder analysis confirmed that there is more of a lack of an awareness of innovative activities going on in the agency. We were able to identify that they're happening, there just isn't that awareness about them, and that there are likely many other innovative activities happening in the agency. It's just reaching out, finding out where they are, and being able to share the success. So this information helped us to shape the goals and that framework of our Culture of Innovation program. To address the issues that we identified in our preliminary stakeholder analysis, we identified things that we could do immediately, and that was to create an awareness of and celebrate existing activities, as well as on the right-hand side, identify where those activities are happening. Do they need help to develop them further, more comprehensively? And then once they have been identified, kind of feed them into that loop of creating the awareness and sharing about their successes more broadly throughout the agency. So specifically, what do I mean about creating an awareness? So these are actions that we can take to highlight the innovation that's already happening. We've established the definition of innovation and make sure to emphasize that it's much broader than just those research-related activities. It's also important to emphasize that it's okay, and in fact, even expected, that there will be mistakes. Making mistakes is fundamental it's a fundamental component to learning. We're providing tools for managers to empower and enable their teams to be innovative. These include speaker series around innovation, self-directed learning. There are a lot of TED Talks that can be used as examples, journal articles, dissertation topics, books that also provide guidance on the importance of innovation. We have an innovation category under the Administrators Excellence Awards. That's what the AEA acronym stands for. We've helped to write 2 nominations for this year for consideration, and we'll know if it's August when we have our ceremony if one of our nominations is selected to be to receive the innovation category award. And certainly there are opportunities to recognize people with cash awards. We also recognize the opportunity to look for innovative characteristics, those that I mentioned, right, that are kind of consistent with the ETM curriculum as part of our recruitment process. So we will be working with our Pathways Program Coordinator for opportunities to look for innovative thinkers as part of that recruitment process. And I also, as part of my work with the recruitment office, encourage them to look for holistic, comprehensive thinking people, exactly kind of like the people that are in the ETM program. Next slide, please. So what have we done and what is being planned? So we've socialized the definition of innovation, the Culture of Innovation program, and program goals. This communication is essential because it's going to demonstrate executive support for our program. Our executives have communicated broadly about the culture of innovation. It makes the workforce comfortable with terms and thinking around innovation. We're able to identify a network for the workforce to ask questions about innovation, and at least it ensures there's visibility of our existing activities. Planned activities that support creating that awareness also include, in addition to those general ones that I mentioned, there is a specific example of innovation moments. We've launched This is Innovation, This is You campaign. So at monthly manager meetings where there is in attendance 300 plus people at that meeting, we highlight an innovator and we call them an innovation moment. The purpose of these moments is to show people how relatively simple or in some cases complex innovation can be. And the aspiration is that they can relate to their peers' success, that they would reach out to them with interest and questions. How did you do that? What was your first step? And it would be a way of encouraging them to be out of the box thinkers. And then a new opportunity that came up as recently as last week is a request from the Department of Energy to submit nominations of innovation that's happening in the workplace. So the selected innovators, those that are selected to be highlighted, will have a virtual coffee opportunity with Secretary Granholm, and their project will be highlighted in written communication throughout the Department of Energy. And so in my mind, this demonstrates the commitment even at the highest levels of the Department of Energy. Next slide. So it's not just lip service. There is a strong demonstrated support from our executive team related to supporting our people and culture. And as I mentioned, I can't overemphasize that support at an executive level is critical for success. So our core value of safety is already well ingrained in our culture. We've expanded efforts to focus on psychological safety. In 2021, in partnership with the North American Transmission Forum, BPA conducted a transmission resiliency maturity model assessment. So certainly there's lots of technical components about that assessment, but there were 2 domains that focused on personnel and developing resiliency in the workforce. So this effort helped to shape a roadmap of sorts for the resiliency component of the culture strategy, and it helps to identify what needs to be done to mature our process in this area. So a large component of BPA's workforce has had the privilege to work from home for these past 2 years. Like many other organizations, we switched from work to telework overnight. And so during this time, Bonneville, with guidance from DOE, has provided significant support in terms of flexible schedules, leave for caregiving, both of sick individuals as well as your school-age children. And words like empathy, grace, compassion, and mental health became part of our vernacular. Employment, sickness, and support were things that I didn't have to worry about. And when it seemed like there were so many other things to worry about, that was a welcome relief. And just take a shout out to our IT department, because I think that our switch to remote work was seamless. I just was really impressed, and that was a resounding theme throughout the initial part of the pandemic. So as we prepare to return to work, we're looking to our leadership for guidance and support in this transition, or one might say new change, right? Another change coming at us. There has been frequent and consistent communication about what to expect. There's been due diligence with our, excuse me, union representatives, and there's consideration for a more flexible work environment going forward. Some of the decisions are difficult, and certainly not everyone agrees with them, but I believe that they're grounded in policies set at the highest levels, and they absolutely have our safety as its most important. I lost my screen, Dr. Anderson. Maybe good. I think I was on the last slide. Yep. So they're supporting us with safety in mind. And I think that that's a really difficult position for them to be in, especially as they're faced with people that don't necessarily agree with decisions that are being made. But personally, having those as the guiding principles makes it real and important and significant, and feel that they can very definitely defend the decisions that they're making. Next slide. So I hope that I have demonstrated BPA's commitment to people and culture. It is a privilege to be part of an organization that really is developing our workforce and demonstrating how important they are to carrying out our mission. Any questions or comments?
Great. Well, thank you very much.